Hey, thanks for the introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll just be talking about how Spark executes your code. Anyone here have worked with Spark before or have heard of Spark? Okay. Right. Okay, so for many people who are just like beginning out with Spark, they might feel that Spark is extremely confusing. So if you work with just normal languages like Python, you might think that after like every line you run, you would see the output, but that is not the case with Spark. So in Spark, nothing seems to happen when you expect it to run. And then sometimes you might think that the job is taking too long to run and you wouldn't know why that happens. So before I get into the details of why, I would first just like to go through the architecture. So Spark is a distributed computing engine, and it follows the master-slave architecture, where the driver program is the master node, and then you will have all the slave workers as all the slave nodes as the worker nodes. And over here, basically, the driver program is where your Spark application gets submitted to. So your driver program is the one which has the full context of your code, and it would like schedule the work across the different worker nodes. And the worker nodes basically don't have an idea of the code. They just execute what the driver sends it. So in each worker node, you could have many executors, which are basically JVM processes. And each, yeah. And the worker nodes, and all of the clusters get managed by the cluster manager. So this is just a small intro to the architecture so that the rest of the slides don't feel very woozy. So yeah, coming back to how Spark executes is that Spark doesn't execute everything line by line. It would first build a plan, and then it would find the best way to execute the code and not just like directly run repeated codes. So what Spark follows is a lazy evaluation where it delays the execution intentionally. So this would allow Spark to optimize its entire job and then remove any redundant operations and then just combine it all so that you have the optimal plan which runs efficiently on your clusters. So the lazy evaluation exists because Spark wants to see the full plan. So I'll be referring to this example in the rest of the slides. This example is basically you have the sales table and the customers table with the following columns: customer ID, your revenue for the sales table, and the customer ID and the region for the customers table. And you go through a few transformation functions, which is basically filtering the sales on the year, and then just joining both the tables on the customer ID. And you finally want to sum up the revenue per region. So you would wonder now that when does Spark actually start executing this code? So in Spark, you have two transformations. I've listed a few examples here, like group by, join, distinct, order by, repartitioning. And then there are another set of operations called actions. And these are the ones which actually trigger, ask Spark for results and it will trigger the execution. So for example, you want to write the data frame as a Parquet file, or you want to store it as a CSV, or you want to get a count of all the data, or you just want to like display the result. So whenever Spark encounters an action, it would trigger execution. So so in your Spark application, you might have like a few actions. And whenever you see that an action is triggered, a job is created. So a Spark application can have many jobs. Below is just the diagram, a flowchart of how Spark executes it. I found it on Databricks. So this part is just basically how it finds the optimal plan. It does not yet start executing the code. So you might have your initial data frames, or you would have an SQL query. So first, Spark would check your query or the data frame to see if it's syntactically correct. And once it sees that it is fine, it would create an unresolved logical plan. And then Spark has an internal tool called a catalog, which basically lists all the tables which are present, all the columns present in the tables, and what the data types of all the columns are. So Spark, from the unresolved logical plan, Spark would see that the stuff you have in your query matches with what's in the catalog. And then if there's some issue like with the semantics or anything, it will throw an error. But otherwise, it will create a logical plan. And once you have the logical plan, Spark would run a few optimizations on it. So for example, an optimization could be something like if you have, say, 10 lines of code and you're filtering after a few operations, but if Spark thinks that that filter can be applied at the source level, it's going to do that so that you don't carry the whole like data frame and pass it through all the steps. But like if you move the filter down to the data source level, you just need to work on the particular subset of rows. So this is one such optimization. Spark runs many optimizations and it would create an optimized logical plan. And from that optimized logical plan, Spark would create many physical plans, which it then runs through a cost model, and then it would select an optimal physical plan. And then it would move on to, actually executing the plan. So till now, everything was just planning, and now is when the execution begins. So now Spark has an optimal plan it can work on. So it will first create a DAG, which is basically a directed acyclic graph. So that would represent the full execution plan of a job, and then it is built by the driver. So now a DAG is divided into multiple stages. So you might wonder how many stages does a DAG divide the work into. So this is based on the number of Y transformations you have. So referring back to the kinds of operations, we had two, transformations and actions. And under transformations, we have, again, two kinds of transformations. One is basically Y transformation, and other is narrow transformations. Y transformations are the one where you would shuffle the data across the network so that it reaches the other executors. And narrow transformations are the ones where you would just run the data in that particular executor, and you do not need the data from any other executors. So example of Y transformations are something like doing a group by or a join. And examples of narrow transformation is something like filter or select or just a count. And so basically, whenever it starts reading the DAG, whenever Spark encounters a Y transformation, it breaks it down into a stage. So basically, everything, all the narrow transformations would fall, would be in a particular stage, and whenever it encounters a Y transformation, it will break into a new stage, and then it will run the subsequent narrow transformations. And then if it again encounters a Y transformation, it's going to break into a different stage. So now each stage gets divided into multiple tasks. So in Spark, your data is partitioned into different partitions. It's divided into different partitions. And what a stage does is it will create the number of tasks as there are the number of partitions. So for example, if your data is divided into 20 partitions, then your stage will be divided into 20 tasks, such that each task would process each partition, and each task would run on a particular executor core. Moving on. So we discussed about shuffles, which is basically the data, you're transferring the data across the network so that other executors can access the same data. So shuffles are an expensive operation, and it would usually make your Spark applications slow. So what exactly happens during a shuffle? So for example, if we take a look at the same example we had, it's the one here listed below. If you just pick the line where we are grouping by one region and taking the sum, in this case, like going back, over here first, what happens is on every executor, you will have some data. So in that particular executor, first, Spark would run that transformation, the group by, and then it would store that intermediate result on the disk. And this data is transferred across the network to the other executors, such that all the similar keys would land on the same executor. And then finally, the executors would read all the shuffled data from the disk. and then it would run the final group by to get the output. So why this is slow is because Spark usually runs everything in memory, but whenever disk operations are involved, things become slow because they are naturally slower than the memory operations. And then since there is also network transfer, there's also those latency and bandwidth limits. And then large data movement would increase the memory pressure on the executors. So hence, shuffles are an expensive operation. So I'll come back to the slide. I'll talk more on the common reasons or like the things you need to check first to see why your Spark jobs are slow. So first, as we had discussed, was shuffles in the previous slide. So if you have a lot of shuffle operations, your job can become slow as it has to move the data across the network a lot. So again, the disk operations are going to take time, and then there could be latency issues. Second thing is if you have data skew, which is basically if one of the partitions has a lot of data compared to the other partitions. In such cases, the stage cannot complete until the longer partition fully executes the job. So what happens here is that there's the stage is like on pause, not on pause, it's working, but like you can't complete the stage until all the tasks are completed for a particular stage. So the next reason could be is because if you have fewer partitions than you have the number of executor cores. So in this case, suppose you have 10 executor cores, but then you have 5 partitions. So what's going to happen is the remaining 5 executor cores are going to remain underutilized, and all the work would be done just by the other 5 executor cores. So there is resource underutilization. And then another case could be there are very small partitions, but then there are a lot of partitions. So you could have like, say, 1 MB partitions, but then you have like 150 of them or 200 of them. So in that case, there's a lot of task scheduling overhead. So these are the common reasons, and Spark jobs could become slow. These could be a good place to start looking at start looking for issues. Coming back, when I was mentioning the plan, I had mentioned the physical plan. I thought I'll give an example of what the physical plan looks like. You can view the plan with the explain function, which is mentioned on top. So we are using the same example. Over here, we always do the physical plan from bottom up. So in this case, if you have, we have 2 tables, sales and customer, and then we are filtering the sales table on the year, and then we are joining it with the customers table. So in over here, the last 4 lines, which is basically the sort, exchange, filter, and scan, those are run for the customer table. So whenever you see the keyword exchange in the physical plan, that means a shuffle is happening, which is basically expensive. So if we just like scan through from bottom to top, first it scans the existing RDD, which is basically it reads the customer table. And then Spark itself has added an optimization of is not null. And then you do an exchange, which is basically shuffle. Over here, the partitioning scheme they've used is hash partitioning, which is basically you get the hash function and for all the keys, and then wherever, over here in this case, the customer ID. And then the similar customer IDs would go to the same executor, and then you sort it there. Now, the same thing happens for the sales table too, which is the 5th line from the bottom till the sort line, you say. So it will again read the sales table. It's gonna, Spark adds its own filter of is not null. And then it also checks if the year is 2024, which is already present in our query. And then it also has another function, another filter of is not null on customer ID. After that, it again shuffles the data so that all the similar key, over here the customer ID, all the similar customer IDs would belong to the same executor, and then it'll again sort it, and then it'll finally merge both the tables. So the sort merge join is basically where the sorting happens, where the join happens. And then if you look up a few lines, you have hash aggregate and exchange, and then again an hash aggregate. So if you check the example, the group by line you see, line 5, the group by on region, and then sum the revenue, that is what's happening there. So we first do an hash aggregate on the region, on the local executor, so that whatever is currently there, it gets, you get the group by and the sum of the revenue there. And then this output, this intermediate output, is being shuffled across the executors. So that is the exchange hash partitioning line you see. And then this, and then this is then, again, you run a hash aggregate, which is like the topmost line, which basically does the final group by and then sums up the revenue. And then the action result.show is what actually triggered the execution. So yeah, this is pretty much what I wanted to cover here. So just summarizing this, whenever in the code Spark encounters an action operation, which is basically a show or writing a file as a parquet or anything, that is when Spark will actually start executing the code. And then it will first create a plan and then divide the plan into DAG. Get the DAG from the plan, and then it'll divide the DAG into different stages based on the number of wide operations it has. And then it'll divide the stage further into many tasks depending on the number of partitions the data is divided into. So this is what Spark execution looks like. And yeah, if you have any questions, yeah. Thank you. Please feel free to reach out. Yeah.